By this will be known as we love one another. There are some things that are probably easier said than done. Sometimes it is a challenge to be able to love through the messiness of conflict, to love in ways that we can be with one another. There are times when we are on our journey. Many of us who have not yet received the inspiration of being able to experience or witness or see what that kind of love looks like. The kind of love that can shift our perspective and help us see a bigger perspective. The kind of love that can draw out our best selves when we are in relationship with another. The kind of love that may call upon us on occasion when we're experiencing one of those bumps or challenges or missteps or mistakes, whether we were the one who began or were the recipient, those things that challenge us to extend forgiveness, to remain with one another, to work through those kinds of differences. I don't know about you, but there were times in my life where I was looking for that kind of love and struggling to understand what that kind of love looked like. As a matter of fact, at one point, I even realized in my 30s that I didn't really know what love was, and I spent a fair number of hours reading through all kinds of cards in the Hallmark store. Funny that I didn't find it there. And this is the reality. Love is patient and kind, but sometimes love is also difficult on our journey. Carter Hayward says that love, the real kind of love that Jesus is talking about, the real kind of love that we have the potential of experiencing in relationship with one another, when we're in a community like ours, it is the kind of love that is not fundamentally just the sweet feeling, the goosebumps, the flush face and the warm fever we may be feeling this time of year in spring. No, this kind of love that Jesus is talking about is active and effective. It's the kind of love that when we actually make love, we make justice. She says that as advocates and activists for justice know, as well as lovers and good friends also know, the most compelling relationships demand hard work, patience, and a willingness to endure tensions and anxieties as we create mutually empowering bonds. That's the kind of love that we don't find there in all of those wonderful sentimental cards or in the movies or in the media. And for a community like ours, it's important to realize that it is the kind of love that the great diversity that we have actually can bring about when we remain committed and in relationship with one another. When we celebrate all of the different diversities and understandings that we have, it is a way for us to actually experience within the presence of one another the divine that lives within. It's important because in this time, in this day and age, with all of the technology that is meant to connect us, study after study is saying, the more connected we are with technology, the less connected and the more alone we actually feel. There's a study that was recently done by a researcher who was looking and wondering about the experience of all of those thousands and thousands and thousands of people across the world and within our own community who are pursuing their own spiritual journey, the spiritual but not religious. All of those who are putting together their own beliefs, who have said goodbye to organized religion and faith. And what she has found is that the more that we desire to pursue our own kind of spiritual journey, the more that we are actually hungering for and looking to be in community with others who will affirm us on that journey and make space for us to share our stories so that we can experience and make meaning of what is actually happening in the world. Said differently, I believe more and more a community just like ours, a community which has as its values at its heart spirituality, diversity, and advocacy. This VIP kind of community that sees everybody as being VIP people, vibrant, inclusive, and progressive. More and more, people are hungering for communities just like ours. Many years ago, while I was pastoring in a different church, at the end of the worship service, I was greeting people as they were going out the door, and there was a gentle tug there on my sleeve. And I looked down to meet the hungering eyes of a 9-year-old. She said to me, I want to learn how to do that. Do what? I wondered. Her mom ran up, a little embarrassed and a little apologetic. She's been talking. She wants to learn how to serve communion. And I thought, hey, no problem. We can do that. And so with a little bit of training, 2 weeks later, she held the elements in the palms of her hand as servers stood beside her to give people their blessing and communion that morning. After worship service, during the social hour, I went up to her and I said, how was that? And she said, it was fun. And I turned to greet somebody else, and there was another tug there on my sleeve, which said, we were so not done yet. She said, but I still want to learn how to do that. Do what? We had been talking throughout that Sunday and throughout an entire worship series about how we as a community believe that everybody is blessed. How we as a community understand that God created every one of us. All of these hands are holy. Everyone has purpose and has been gifted and is called to use those gifts one way or another, that we might be this incredible body of God's love and justice. And so her mom came over to explain. She wants to bless the elements. Without any theological training or without the words, what she was actually asking was, she wanted to preside at table. She wanted to invite the congregation into the celebration of this communal Thanksgiving feast. Now, I know we all come from different traditions, and for many of us, the traditions that we come out of, and for most of us, that there would have been scandalous. She was a girl. She was a child. She hadn't had any theological training and no ordination. And yet, the amazing thing is, for a community such as ours, for a people who come from such diverse backgrounds, in places, that we actually have the capacity to be courageous enough to actually say, all are welcome, all are invited. And surely with the proper training and a little coaching, all, even a 9-year-old girl, might have the potential to welcome us in this communal feast. From a practical perspective, I believe that our table manners matter. Whether we are talking about here in worship as we celebrate this great Thanksgiving feast, or whether we are talking about in the coffee shops or in the living rooms or in the dining rooms that we may find ourselves, how we open the table, how we invite others in, how we share what God has given to us matters profoundly. And I believe that this is exactly Jesus' point when he sits there and gives us this new commandment. It's not really a new commandment if you think about it. You can go all the way back to the words of Moses and beyond. Loving others was part of what was core to their culture and how they honored one another. But what Jesus does is he shifts that direction. Love each other. And the way that you love each other is the way that people will actually experience God's love in this world. God's love is not separate from our relationships. God's love is part of the way that we are in relationship with one another. And if you look at Jesus' table manners, which he got in trouble with over and over and over again, right there, in the final hours of his final day, of his ministry, he takes time to break the bread and bless it. And who's gathered around him? It's a diverse community. Sinners and saints, prophets and prostitutes. They are men and they are women from all walks of life, all places on their spiritual journey, people who don't quite know what to even make of him. There are people, he says, in just a few hours you're going to betray me. There are others, he said, when fear runs up, you're going to deny me. He says it's okay. It's okay, because what I'm calling you into is to have a love, to model this love, to see within the love that I'm sharing for you the kind of love that can reconcile us across all of those differences. The kind of love that when we find the capacity to love one another, even when they may betray us or deny us or let us down, that's the kind of love that models and shows people the kind of love that God has for us and for them together. It's scandalous. It is scandalous. But I think that's the point. The point of a community like ours. The point of a little girl who is moved by the Spirit so much that she desires to break bread and welcome a community in. And so, after long conversations over the course of several months with mother and daughter, I want to hear what it is that she understands is happening here at the table and why it is that she feels so moved. And they share the story of their own rejection by family and communities of faith, and how loving and wonderful that community had been to walk with them and to hold them and to embrace them when they needed to be embraced. And now she thought the best way to say thank you was to invite them into sharing this meal of God's love together. And so, on the Sunday, they shared a story. The little girl said, before they broke bread, that they were at Grandma's home, and there was a knock on the door, and there was somebody who said a few words to Grandma. He was obviously hungry and homeless, and Grandma says to the person, "Wait, right there for a second." And Grandma goes to the kitchen, and she makes a sandwich, and she puts it in her best Tupperware. And the little girl says, the Tupperware that I wasn't allowed to bring to school because I might forget it. But Grandma puts it in a bag with an apple and gives it to the man and sends him on his way. We never saw him again, she says, not even to bring back the Tupperware. They finished blessing the elements, breaking the bread, serving the congregation, and then serving each other. I don't think there was a dry eye in that sanctuary that day. And another thing happened. From that point forward, all of those little challenges that we've experienced, all of those differences because of the different traditions that many people were part of, all seem to now be a blessing instead of a challenge. When somebody was being blessed because we were singing a song that wasn't part of their tradition, somehow the congregation had developed a capacity to be blessed. Not that I understand what's going on, but because somebody else is being blessed within our presence. Somehow, the congregation had seen through the eyes of this little girl the vision of what community and relationship could possibly be when we walk with one another together. I believe that that is exactly the power of the ministry of a community like ours. in a time like this, when so many do not have those kind of models within their own relationships or within their own traditions. MCC Toronto stands out. You are that difference. For us to be a community that is blessed when others are blessed, because we have the capacity to celebrate our diversity rather than try to water it down. Carter Hayward says, to say I love you is truly to say you are not mine, but rather you are your own. To say I love you is to advocate your rights, to give you space so that you may be yourself, to commit to struggling with you rather than against you. And in our learning, to claim the power to create a whole new world. To love you is then to sing with you and surely to cry with you and to pray with you even when I don't know those words that you are praying. It is to break bread with you and to act with you that together we may recreate the world. I believe, my friends, deep within each one of us and deep within thousands and thousands and thousands of strangers who have not yet come through those doors, there is a dream. It is a dream of something which is greater, for which we alone are unable to experience or call forth. But when we commit to be together, amazing things happen on this journey. In our questions and in our challenges, in our stories and in our different perspectives, may we commit to being with one another in ways that they truly may know us by our love. May we be blessed on our journey. Amen.